Yes, people, what is going on? It's Mike back again. And you're thinking, what's with all these breaks, Mike? What's with all these little breaks? Why is the content just not churning out? Mate, literally, it's madness in my life at the minute. Madness. I mean, look, I've even got this little side quiff thing going on. It's just full on, mate. I've got loads of stuff on. Obviously, the house and everything. We're getting there. Hopefully, touch wood, 3 or 4 weeks before we're moving in, guys. So it's just been a little bit hectic. I'm still trying to keep up with the previews and the match reactions, but I'm struggling for the content in the middle. But it's not to worry. I've told you there's plans. There's big plans for the channel going forward. We're going through a whole rebranding process as well. So that'll be coming in time. Graphic designers doing that for us, and they're actually going to complete it, I believe, tomorrow. So we're not going to be going live tomorrow, but we'll probably be going live for the next preview. But yeah, there's lots of stuff going on, so don't panic. Don't panic. Channel's cool. Channel's cool, I promise. There isn't loads of Everton news, really. It's internationals. You know, we've already saw that Patterson's been injured. Mikalenko picked up a knock in his warm-up as well in the same game. I mean, it's typical Everton curse, and it always is typical Everton curse. And another thing, I've done a sort of a quarter season review over on the Across the Park podcast channel. With Pricey, so go and have a little look at that, guys. Good video. I was on form. I was on fire. But yeah, I just wanted to give you my little thoughts. That video is much more in depth. This season so far has been a bit weird, hasn't it? You know, it started, you know, not great. We give away a silly penalty against Chelsea and we lose. We then, you know, go up against Aston Villa and lose. But actually, following that, we've been all right, as I said, and I've stuck to it the whole time. The only real disappointing result has been the Forest game, because, you know, when you look at Forest now, yes, they've signed all these players and they've got a gel and all of that, but, you know, on paper, even without a striker, we probably should have been beating Forest, but we didn't. But I don't think this season's been horrendous. You know, we could have scored 2 against Leeds. 1 was disallowed. Brentford was a similar story. We got a draw against Liverpool, and we win our first game of the season last weekend. So it's not been a bad season. We've looked okay. We've looked defensively combative. We've looked solid. Mikalenko has been really good at left back. Maybe not the going forward element, but the defensive stuff. He's been sound. He's been fantastic. Nathan Patterson, you're sort of praying his injury is not bad, because he's been brilliant. So you're really hoping that's better. But the two centre halves have made the difference. Tarkowski and Cody, they've been sensational. They've been really, really good. And, you know, it's really positive for Everton that they've all of a sudden got this solid base at the back and got this ability to move the ball forward. And they can play in different ways. And that's really positive. The midfield's been exceptional. Anana, Garner come in, looked like he'd never been out the team. And then you've got the absolute brilliance of Alexander Iwobi at the minute, who has really turned a corner. And I've said, look, he always has this sort of period. Every season he has a period of games where he looks really good. But from start to finish this season, he's looked fantastic. And I'm just hoping this is a complete turnaround. I'm hoping this is the complete turnaround, and we see this consistent Iwobi. Or, you know, Iwobi for 30 games a season like this, and every player's going to have an off game. But if he can give us 30 performances like this, he's undroppable. He's undroppable. So I've been really impressed with him. I think Damari Gray's worked his socks off, but he needs to release the ball a little bit quicker. I think Gordon, you can argue, has been exactly the same. And obviously, as a striker, as a vocal point, look, Rondon is not a Premier League striker anymore, and there's no point sitting here and crucifying him about it, because he knows. he won't be silly to that. He won't be silly to that, because, you know, he's of an age now where players naturally start to slow down. I mean, to me and you, I mean, he's what, 32? I mean, it's not exactly old, is it? But in Premier League life these days, these players are getting younger and younger and younger. We saw it the other weekend with Arteta and that young 15-year-old. I can't pronounce his name, but, you know, coming on against Brentford. So we're seeing the ages and you know, Rondon hasn't always been the most mobile anyway, but he was at least holding the ball up for us. But you know, you kind of felt like Everton needed something different. Malpay's come into the side, and he has been that bit different. Look, he isn't a clinical striker, and he isn't a brilliant striker, but he will get you a goal. He will get you a moment, and he got us that moment against West Ham, and he scored a good goal. You know, a little touch up on the turn, little half volley, and he smashed it home. And you know, these are the things that actually Calvert-Lewin doesn't do. So Calvert-Lewin, you can't even say comes back into the side, and that changes, that dynamic changes. I do think you'll see Everton putting more balls into the box with Calvert-Lewin. I think you'll see Everton being a little bit more direct at times with Calvert-Lewin, and that's fine, that's good. We've shown that we can do that, so that's a positive. So all in all, I'm happy. You know, when we go into a run of games where, you know, I think Southampton away, I think that is a challenge, but a game that we can get a result in. Manchester United at home, again, a challenge, but a game we can get a result in. And you just feel a bit more comfortable and positive. I think if Everton can genuinely get, say, you know, and maybe it's a tough ask, but maybe get 7 or 8 points in the next 4 games, it moves you away from that bottom 3. We're 13th at the minute. We're above teams on goal difference, like teams like Aston Villa, who, you know, who were meant to be signing loads of players. And, you know, we're above West Ham, for example, who finished in the top 7 again last season. And, you know, I think we're level on points, or a point behind Newcastle, who apparently have started fantastic. So there's lots of these teams that Everton have been compared against, and actually we've been nowhere near. Last year we were, you know, Newcastle ran away with it after, say, January. They got themselves out of trouble and carried on. West Ham was 7th, and Aston Villa, albeit they finished above us and probably not miles away from us, you know, they're still, you know, on paper they've got a much fuller squad. So Everton have been doing absolutely fine, and, you know, I don't look at Everton and think they're going to be in a relegation battle. If anything, you know, I sit there and think Bournemouth, I think Leicester, and I think it's between Forest and Fulham. I think they're the teams that will go down. And people will say, oh yeah, Fulham have started really well, and, you know, Bournemouth have got points, etc. But these teams tend to drop off. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Hull City sitting 6th and then getting relegated. You know, we've seen teams that have started the Premier League well fall apart at times. So I think Everton are fine this season, and actually they're looking the right way. And, you know, they've got a company now that are looking at the commercial element of Everton, because obviously when this deal went P-tong with the Kaminsky family, when obviously the USM deal went wrong, they had to do something about the naming rights of the stadium, and they've got an outsourced company to go and try and produce that and solve that problem, which again, weirdly, is a positive, because the club aren't very good strategically and thinking outside the box. We've known that for years, because they've had these deals in the past that haven't been very constructive, in my opinion. You know, the Phonetics deal was pants, and his pants. You know, we've only just started selling shirts in places like Ireland and America. You know, and if you want a global reach like the Premier League is, Everton need to be all over that. So getting a company that is being involved in these things is a real positive. You know, it's got people sitting in that company that are part of, like, American baseball teams and, you know, American football and property investors. So there's going to be a large community of people that are going to be looking at the naming rights of Everton and going to go, you know what, we want to be all over that stadium, and it'll be massive. It'll be massive. And look, it won't be a glamorous name. Could you imagine, you know, we've all had this talk about, do you remember the Tesco Stadium in Kirby, etc., and it might not be a great name. It might not be Bramley Moor Dock. It might not be a Goodison Park, a heritage, a tradition. But what it might be is a stadium that fundamentally can pretty much fund itself, bar a little bit of debt, which Everton can manage because of the Premier League money, which is a positive. And the way that the stadium's going up, the drone footage from other creators and within the club, it's brilliant to see how Everton are moving forward. And, you know, for the first time in probably 4.5 years, because, you know, I was still very optimistic for about 2 years under Mashiro. For the first part Oh, it was great, and then the 4.5 years after have been a bit pants, if I'm being honest. You know, we've all said it, and I also don't forgive Mashiri, and I still don't rate this board. But what I do have is a little bit of hope that we're going in the right direction, and that's exactly what it's about. Everton will go into this game against Southampton, and there'll be no fear. There'd be no fear. Whereas last season, I'd have been like, I can't see us picking up a point. Whereas actually, I think we can go to Southampton and we can win the game. We can win the game. We'll certainly dominate midfield. Defensively, we're solid. And if we can nick a goal or two, we win the game. I mean, and that's... You're going into every single game now as an Everton fan going, well, we could keep a clean sheet here. Or they're only going to score one. Because we've only conceded 2 all season. We've only conceded 2 to one team this season. That was Aston Villa. And the second one was a mistake by Onana, who'd just come on for his debut. So you can live with that. You know, you can live with that. So honestly, I don't have that worry. I have a positive outlook, and it's great. It's great. You know, Everton, you know, they probably need to do more in January. I still think we need probably a little bit of a creative player. I think Kudus would have been brilliant, and he came out and he explained that, you know, there was the Everton offer on the table. And apparently the kid, by all accounts, has been fantastic for Ajax this season. So clearly the scouting team got it right scouting him. An £8 million fee probably was a bargain. Just couldn't get the deal done, which is a shame. But it makes you think that, you know, January moving forward, it's positive. I tell you what, look at the frigging state of my hair. My God, there's so much. Look, it can go both ways now. So yeah, it's positive, guys. I'm happy. I just feel like we just need to keep going. You know, we need to keep going. We need to look. We've had these injuries, but we've got to hope that Seamus Coleman can come in and be the energetic person he was 5 years ago. You know, he doesn't have to do it every game anymore. If he plays 2 or 3 games on the bounce, so be it. We've got a World Cup round the corner. He just needs to get us through until Patterson's back. And Mykolenko, look, whatever happens on the left-hand side has to happen. Vinagre is a Premier League experienced player. He might not be the best defensively, but he's okay going forward. It wouldn't surprise me if you see Everton revert back to that 3-5-2 with Vinagre in the side, because I think what Coleman and him will do is they will leave us more exposed. So I think he'll probably bring in a third centre back. But again, that's fine. That's fine, because, you know, it sounds a very defensive team, but Onana can go forward. You know, Iwobi can go forward. We can play 2 strikers. We can rely on balls into the box. I just think there's so many more options now for Everton, and we haven't got the biggest squad. We haven't even got the most talented squad, but we've got a group of players that seem to be really playing for Frank Lampard and really playing for us as fans, and that is something that it just makes me feel warm. You know, it just makes me feel warm. So, guys, look, I'm leaving it there. Keep smiling. I promise there'll be more content coming. Up the toffees. Peace.